All right. Welcome to On the Side, the show about side hobbies and hustles of everyday people. The goal here is to focus on what we do outside of our main jobs and dive into the passion projects and explore these communities and subcultures that people get into outside of a 9 to 5. Today we have a good one for you. I got to link with an old friend, Austin Oliver, and we went over his journey in the bodybuilding space, his approach and opinions on lifting, as well as some other side tangents, more opinions, and lots of curse words. I was going to try and keep it kid-friendly, I'll be completely honest, but it was a futile attempt. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this one, and if you do, share it with your gym partner, your friends, your acquaintances, and everybody else. Just not your mom or kids, because of the aforementioned curses. All right, let's go! Bam. We are officially live. All right, dude. So, look, this is episode 1 of the podcast that I've talked about for like 4 years. So I'm absolutely pumped to get it started, and I'm pumped to have you on. I think it's gonna
be your first guest.
Yes, sir. Number 1. I was thinking about this for weeks, really, and I was trying to figure out the right timeline and everything. And I was like, Ollie would be such a good person to talk to about what you're doing and what you have going on and how you're kind of pursuing the goals and whatnot. So I figured it'd be a good way to kick it off.
I appreciate that, man.
Yes, sir. So let's get right into it, man. Let's get a brief overview of like what you're currently doing. You kind of touched on it a minute ago with UT and you're in your capstone course. So what is it that's kind of the main focus of your life right now?
So this is my second year of my master's degree. It's in public affairs at University of Texas in Austin, right? The Lyndon B. Johnson School, sort of the setup because it's attached to the LBJ Library. Doing that, I mean, like I have my 4 courses, regular course, so it's a master's program. It's exactly what you would think it is. The material's like pretty interesting, and I have some professors I like, but I feel like a lot of this, and like this is kind of how education always is just you being exposed to more and more ideas rather than anything like new. I don't know. It's like I don't know that I couldn't get all this information myself. I just didn't know. I wouldn't know what the information is that I would need. So
yeah.
So it's been pretty engaging. Doing that, I have to figure out what the hell I'm doing in a year when I graduate, or in less than a year now, and have an actual job and be employed and a human being. But to that end, I'm working for the city still, doing some of their contracts, monitoring, and coronavirus response stuff for the emergency management department or the Homeland Security emergency management department. It's been good. I mean, that's not very challenging. It's working with the city, right? So it's solid, right? I make my good hours a week and get paid, and all those important things happen, which I like. And then I'm doing a little internship as well, which is a little more scaled down for a trade group that does affordable housing in Texas and represents industry developers who want to secure these tax credits, which enable them to build affordable houses and offer them at below market rates. And so that's been a good bit of work as well. And everyone who works there is really nice. So that's my life on the professional front right now.
Nice. Yeah, that's actually, we could probably spend an entire half hour or full episode diving into that. That's really interesting. I didn't know about the affordable housing side. That's pretty cool. I'm sure that'll help in Austin as well with all of the recent economic boom going on over there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet, man. Okay, so you got one more semester and then you're off and rolling. Yeah.
And then I'm off on my own. Yeah.
Okay. And
I like having a job so much rather than being in school, man. Like the level of like, just I'm seeing this wall like coming at me, like you need to start making money by X date, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, why did I ever do this? I just kept the job I had where I made money. I'm so stupid.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have that kind of not like, you could call it maybe a quarter life crisis, right? Where they look at all of their past choices and then they have to kind of decide the differences and the trade-offs and whatnot. But I like what you're saying about finding the information and like having it being given to you. I think that's kind of, because you're right, the information can be found. It's out there. The internet it houses everything. But I think one of the best parts about school is they kind of find, or ideally they find a good way to funnel the information to you so you can digest it at certain points, and you're not just bouncing around from source to source to source and piecemealing it all together yourself.
Yeah, and really good professors will make you think with the people in your class as well. So just having you think at the same time as them, you'll actually engage in thinking with them, and that's how you learn things. That's the whole point of having a goddamn class, which I understand in the pandemic last year was kind of like lost. And there are some professors who will just teach from lecture and don't give a fuck about the kids actually engaging with each other. But for the ones you have who are like really able to drive class discussion, that's another thing. You're just like, oh yeah, that's right. This is the whole point of like sitting together in a classroom and teaching things like this, and not just doing things, student to student sort of rote like that. But,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and then you kind of, once you get that flow of information, it's kind of on you or on the student to parse it out and choose their route, I guess, from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool, man. All right, so outside of the school coursework, you've got the internships, and then you've got the job. The whole crux of this interview is to focus on the side projects and side hustles of interesting people, of which you classify as that. So let's talk about bodybuilding and lifting in general and what it is that you kind of do in that space.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's weird. It's a weird thing to quantify because it's something that so much of my free time, I just instantly gravitate towards sucking that up. Right. Like, I don't know. I mean, you saw last year when you were living with me, right? Like, I think I have all this free time that I spend doing whatever, but like, and then this free time is I choose what I do with it. But the entire time, like, my trying to like learn things or my brain's engaged, or I'm just sitting there. And the thing that strikes me as I talk about all this now is like how, I don't know, beyond my own enjoyment, how absolutely fundamentally useless this shit is, right? Like, it's really not like actually going to make me more money for a certain point in time, or maybe it will, but it's not. That's not why I do it, right? I don't sit down and think, how can I make my life better, this, that. I just sort of like get sucked into learning more about what it is to get bigger, stronger, have more pop, understand what is behind the scenes between strongman, bodybuilding, powerlifting, right? Like, it's, so I don't know if that answers your question at all, but like, it sort of is this like, I don't know, like how other people are fans of like baseball or something. Like, I enjoy learning about the process of getting larger and more jacked.
Just getting strong, yes. Like a freaking rhino. Yeah. Well, let's back it up a little bit. And we'll kind of dig through all of the things you just brought up. For those who listen and don't know, you and I met in college on the wrestling team. If I remember correctly, you wrestled at 157, right?
Yep.
That was like the first weight class. So obviously, throughout college, as you grow and mature, people typically go up weight classes, but there won't be a video version. So people who are listening won't be able to see it, but you're touching what, 230 right now?
240.
Oh, you beast. Okay. So yeah, you put on, about 80 pounds over 7-8 years.
Yeah.
From the beginning of that college career, around that 150 or 160s, because you would be cutting, when did you get interested in, and how did you start getting your information as it pertains to bodybuilding?
So it wasn't really, I'd always been like interested in lifting weights and stuff, right? I was in 7th grade. My dad was like, all right, you gotta get stronger for wrestling. So you could go in the gym and, you did your friggin' seated cable curls while your dad was there going, think about pulling the double leg, Yes. Like, it's just stupid shit like that, right? So I knew how to train, I knew how to move my body. I had like sort of fundamental ideas down about how you want to do more weight than last week. You want to do sets of 10, like basic things that any, Air Monarch wearing YMCA dad would be able to tell you, right? All the fundamentals. But it wasn't until after I got done wrestling that I really like turned to bodybuilding and really captured my imagination. After my sophomore season where I had the concussion and then I fucking was all messed up. I mean, not all messed up mentally, but like I just stopped doing school for the second half of my sophomore year. And so like that made me really reset a lot of things. And I knew I wanted to go to be a Marine at that point. And so I had to get in really good shape for that. But so that's kind of how I was training at that point in my junior year before that summer. But the content I was consuming, the things I was interested in that people wanted to be like, right? Like I had already, the switch had flipped to my brain. Like I was watching Ronnie Coleman videos before I work out. And like when I don't know, people like watch YouTube videos out in the background, they like consume those. I sit there and I watch like someone who's, I don't know, like a fucking autistic savant, sit there and just watch the way that he would move his chest, how he contract the muscle, like how many seconds he take, count every single rep for him, for Jake Cutler, for like a lot of these like, and I'm sure most people listening to this don't have a clue who these guys are, but like just if you want to see some freaky human beings, look them up because they look preposterous. Like no one's supposed to be that size.
Yeah, I actually, to interrupt you, I think that's actually the perfect point because I think in the bodybuilding space, like when I was with you, you introduced me to a lot of new names, but I'm an outsider of that bodybuilding space, but I knew Ronnie Coleman, I know Jay Cutler. I mean, these guys are probably the easiest entry point to get into the industry, right? I mean, I don't know, a lot of people know Ronnie Coleman, and nobody want to get big, or everybody want to get big, but nobody want to lift heavy ass weights. You know, like those are things that if you're in a sporting environment when you're young, you somehow, some way come across that stuff. So, all right, that makes a lot of sense. So you kind of started with them as your onboarding, and then obviously relied on your base of sports and just general fitness interest to kind of learn how to get bigger.
Right, and like it was tough at the time because I knew like, I mean, I don't know, like it's, you don't know what to Ronnie Coleman. I think you just get there by, you know, drinking your whey shakes and going for jogs every weekend, right? Like there was never like a point in my mind where I didn't think that if I really wanted to get to that size, right, like that, you know, being a Marine or doing other things were compatible, I would just sort of put that on the back burner and learn about at the time. And then obviously with breaking my tibia, you know, that sort of closed out for me. And that's the point where going into my final semester of college, that senior year, where I really was like, all right, like we're going to go all in on this. And I started packing my meals, you know, doing everything else. Like, I don't know how much you want to put other things I was doing at that point, but there's that as well. Which I'm happy to get into further. And so I mean, you saw me, I hulked out that fall, but like that was when I really began to be following, you know, some of the more new guys, like the Ian Valliers, the Chris Bumsteads, the James Hongsteads, like you can name them. I mean, I can name them. I'm sure most people can't name them, but and that's really when I started getting deep into it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So because this happens to me for any kind of little thing that I'm interested in, you kind of start with maybe the one or two big names, and then you somehow just through, you know, that big name mentions another name who's a little bit smaller, you take it upon yourself to then Google that person, and then you see that he's working with so-and-so or she's working with so-and-so, and then you come across a couple brands, and then you kind of get involved in the whole industry and in that whole community. So it sounds like you had, I guess, two kind of events with it being the concussion and then breaking your tibia that kind of caused you mentioned to reset and reassess where you were going, what you were doing, and kind of become a little bit more intentional with what you were focusing on. So I think it was around what your senior year transitioning out of college was when that you said you hulked out, like you really went all in, started meal prepping, you found these new other names and you got a little bit deeper. You had another year or two in Jersey, New York area where you were lifting and just consuming the content of these people who were influencing how you were lifting and what you were eating. Yeah.
Like that was, so I'm gonna date all this shit to like things that like happened in the bodybuilding world because that's how my brain works for all this, right? Like I can still remember watching Chris Bumstead's Olympia prep videos for his first title. At the same time, I was starting to finally be able to bench 3 plates. At the same time, I was starting to really like get up to, you know, the solid 200, 210 range. I can like, it's funny. I can replay. I remember one night, maybe it was 2 weeks after him at the Olympia, and he was talking about how tired he was and he didn't feel like cooking his egg whites. He would just drink them sometimes in the mornings. And I decided, my buddy was over staying with me on apartment. I drank a thing. I was almost throw up because how disgusting it was. I was like, these people are built different. So yeah, no, like everything's like very dated to these like big calendar events, kind of like a full fan. Like, oh, I remember when, you know, Joe Flacco was considered an elite quarterback, right? Like I can recall that same kind of like period of time when people thought this or that guy was hyped, and that's how I base all this.
Wow, yeah. elite reference there. No, yeah, that makes perfect sense, and also like it kind of shows the interest you have into the space, right? Where you're like, oh, this guy eats raw egg whites, like time for me to eat raw egg whites, yeah. You know, like let me just try it. And that's what I love about diving into these side hobbies and hustles is like you'll see people do it, and then some people take it upon themselves to try it as well. And then you
that's how dry scooping pre-workout became a thing. Who the fuck would actually like consume powder like that? It tastes disgusting. It hurts. Like that's such a stupid, like actually kind of dangerous idea. If you cough or some shit, it goes in your lungs. But like that, influencers wanted to be able to show the bottle of the actual product on the way to the gym to get those clicks, and so they just started dry scooping as a way to show the bottle. And then like just regular idiots like me and you and whoever else were like, oh, let's just dry scoop. It'll be faster. We'll do this. It's like, no, it's not. They only did that in the first place to try to show off the label. Like,
wait. Okay. So that was strictly product placement and gaming YouTube and sponsorships was just to get like bucked up or C4 or whatever like on the camera. Oh my god.
Yep. And then now people think it's some sort of like thing. Like it became overnight. Like it became a thing.
Yeah, it's like more effective. It gets straight into your bloodstream. Like
it hits faster. Dads will tell you it hits faster. It's like, how did it hit any faster? You're putting it in your stomach. Whether it's liquid or solid, that's all you're doing. You're putting it in your stomach.
That's amazing. All right. That's great. So, also that's really interesting how you mentioned like you can timestamp it to videos you were watching and then events in your life and how that's correlated. So you moved to Texas as time was going on. And I think you were working at Scadden at the time, and I guess you had decided you wanted to really have a career change. You were applying to grad school. I'm not really sure how that all worked out, but you ended up moving to Austin. When you're moving to Austin, it's very important, and you and I are similar in this way where, we're looking up where we're going to train, we're researching.
That was the reason why I chose Austin, to be blunt.
Okay, beautiful. That was going to be my next question was, why did you end up in Austin? How did you research the venues? And then we'll get into those answers in a second.
Yeah, so I got into University of Chicago and University of Texas at Austin. I looked at price, I looked at climate, I looked at a lot of different things. I'll tell you that I knew of Chicago Barbell Compound, sort of not super far from the University of Chicago campus, where the men's physique was competed from 2 years ago and rating this year had trained out of a lot of good powerlifters had trained out of a couple other open guys who I know of had trained out of. But it was expensive, and it's Chicago, and the hours weren't 24/7. And then I looked, I put some stuff on, like some forums for bodybuilding on Reddit and shit, and asked people for their suggestions and looked up some stuff, and I found a big Tex Gym. Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, it was actually, what kind of forums were you on Reddit? And I think that's great.
Our bodybuilding and our steroids are the two ones that you better to go-tos for learning about training. Our powerlifting is not bad either, but they're a little more stuck up and fussy. And if you want to hear about like people, I don't know, chasing crazy pumps and behaving like animals, like bodybuilding or steroids would be your place for that.
Okay. No, that's actually perfect, right? Because like for people who want to, get familiar with the space or dive in or whatever, like we mentioned earlier, with the internet, there's a lot of information. It's hard to kind of get a steady stream of quality stuff. So I agree with you. I think Reddit's a great way to just kind of dive into the community. So our bodybuilding, our steroids, and our powerlifting. Yeah. Those are like great subreddits for the space. Interesting.
Reddit is a really good way of finding out what other people think about something. Not a great way of finding out the truth about something, right? Like you have to do that on your own. You have to be able to pick through. But if you want to know what the majority of people think about a thing, Reddit's a great place for that. But like there's just from like a making sure no one ruins their lives things, I wouldn't recommend that you go ahead and follow the medical advice to find any of these places, because a lot of it is not great. But the point is it reflects what the community believes about certain things, and it also like can be a good point of information sharing, which is how I found Big Tex, which is notable as one of the top gyms in the nation. You had Ben Pollock, who's now an IFBB pro and is a multiple-time all-time world record holder for powerlifting, had trained out of Big Tex while he was getting his master's in physical culture at the University of Texas, which is pretty cool. And so that was one of the things that attracted me to training at Big Tex. Then I came down and visited, got to meet the owner, this dude who's like 6'8", and his name is Rob, and he was this former special forces guy. He's about 250 pounds. He's absolutely terrifying, probably more like 270. This is just a side note for your own. He has to eat like 10,000 calories a day to maintain his size. It's absurd. Like it's preposterous. So he's obviously someone who loves to train, who wants something, wants the members to all be vested in it and all that good stuff. And so having checked it out with my father, I was like, all right, we're sold. This is for me.
I'll address that side note there. After when I was living with you and really was trying to gain weight and lift harder and whatnot, I started tracking my meals and adding, peanut butter and jellies or doubling the egg intake, oatmeal or whatever. I barely was getting over 2,000 a day. And I mean, I was like, for me, I was force feeding myself to get to like 2,400 calories a day. Yeah, 6'8", it's a bigger machine. You're churning out a lot naturally. That's insane. 5 times what I was eating oh my God.
I mean, you saw me when you were living. I started to hate eating at the end. Like I was just fucking pounding it. And I wasn't even that controlled. Like I was just running through rice and chicken.
Yeah. Did you run out of those rice bowls, by the way?
I finished them the first week of this year. Of the school year. Yeah.
They lasted forever.
The rice cooker. But yeah,
wow,
it lasted fucking ever.
All right, so Big Tex you found. I had the pleasure of joining you on many a Big Tex adventure, and I have a shirt from there. I love that place. tried to explain it to some people. It is a very unique environment. It's not a Crunch. It's not a Planet Fitness. And I think you need that for the type of lifting and training that you do. Can you explain the dynamic of Big Tex?
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, I think according to like the old timers, this is how every gym was in the 80s, right? Like that was just like the default of what a gym was. And so it's like not dirty, but a little grimy. There's some rust on some things. There's some holes in floors here and there. They've got really, really good equipment. They've got a monolift. They've got all kinds of specialty bars for doing different types of lifts. And it's a very relaxed, like I want to say it's not like a family atmosphere because there's like giant monsters of men throwing huge weights around, but like everyone's super nice, super low key. People working at the front desk are like real cool, and you can just sort of show up, drop in when you want. They give you little like tags so you can check in and out. Like on that level, it's a very low key gym. But if you want to see someone lifting an absurd amount of weight or have 5 or 10 people all scream at you when you try to deadlift something or like really get hyped up and get into it and get fired up, it's also a place full of people who do want to see us succeed and do want to push. And so like walking around shirtless or screaming at the mirror, behaving generally like a knuckle dragger, they're all encouraged. It's all like a big fun kind of like show up, kick your own ass, and be the best atmosphere. And you have like people writing all over the walls different inspirational quotes or different days they had a PR. So it's a really nice community. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100% with all of that. I love the knuckle dragger quote. That's actually funny. I've never heard that before. But yeah, I agree. Like there would be it seemed right. Like there were people who you didn't really know, but if they're PRing, there's enough talking going on the floor that you know someone's about to go for a PR or something. Heads would turn, people would hold off on their lift to yell, to cheer him on, to give that guy that extra 10%, right? Or gal that extra 10%. Yeah, and the shirtless like flex, but to not just to flex to like take a selfie, but to like work on bodybuilding poses and stuff. And it was like people would give tips. It was a very helpful, very supportive environment. I thought that was just very, very unique.
I mean, I think it's when you come from like a Crunch to a Big Tex or when you have that kind of division, right? Like everyone who was a Big Tex chose to be there and they chose to be different and chose to be weird. And so when you're around a whole lot of people who chose to all know that they consciously chose that same thing, it's a lot easier, right? And it's the same reason why you see a lot of people with Big Tex have visible tattoos or piercings or like it's a collection of people who want to be different actively. And when you all want to be different in the same way, as crazy as that sounds, right, it creates a real strong community. Like, and it's a lot different than, I don't know, like I'll put it like this. Like people don't go to Big Tex to work out. They go to Big Tex to train. People go to the commercial gyms to work out. They go to Big Tex to try to say something about who they are as people and how they can be better than they were yesterday. And that's like, that's a very addictive thing to be around.
That was beautifully put. I agree. That's great. Yeah, nice. I mean, we're putting out a promo for Big Tex at this point.
Yeah.
It's
the answer to what the fuck is wrong with all of our modern like corporate crap gyms. Like I can't understand why people would want to go to somewhere that feels the same as everything else just to like preserve their own sense of internal validity and comfort, right? Like, I don't know. To me, going to a gym, you're supposed to be a little outside our comfort zone, right? If I walked into a gym, I don't know, it's like you from wrestling, right? From any sport you play. If you walk into a wrestling room and you're the best wrestler there, something is wrong, right? Like you shouldn't be happy with that. Like you feel you're too comfortable if you walk into that situation, right? Like you want to walk into a room thinking, man, there's about 5 dudes here who could kick my butt if I'm not on point today. And going to Big Tex, you look around and you say, wow, there's a lot of strength here. I have a lot of room where I can be better. And it's feeling like you have a lot of room where you can improve is a really good place to be. Feeling like you're king shit and you can walk around like the man. What do you gain then? Where's your upside to having that, or to being a top dog, or to being, whatever it is?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think you can apply that really to everything, right? Like you mentioned, you can bring this into different spheres with wrestling and whatnot. But, even just objectively, you undertaking the journey to get into bodybuilding, that's out of your comfort zone. That wasn't a space where you had answers to questions. You weren't like the person that people would go to for information. You had to find it. You were a little bit like Bambi on wobbly legs for a little while before you got everything underneath you. Yeah, I mean it's like the void of complacency, right? So you're pushing to grow and learn, and yeah, that's 100%. So as you've gone through different gyms and gone through different workouts and programs and whatnot, some people I've noticed and just through conversations, there's a lack of knowledge and experience in pairing workouts, doing certain things on different days, maybe bringing a full program together. How did you kind of learn about programming and pairing exercises for the express goal of growing?
So, I mean, off the bat, right? And like, I think I just want to make this super, like, this is just my view. This is my, like, super clear. There is so much overcomplication of that space deliberately in order to sell products that it's really infuriating and kind of crazy, right? If it's your first time in the gym, like, and for the first like 6 months or a year, you really just need to work hard and not injure yourself, and you will get bigger and stronger, right? Like it's very hard to fuck that up. And the flip side is you can do almost anything and then go, oh, look, that's an amazing program I built. I gained 20 pounds. It's like, congratulations. You could have done, you could have done 3x10 in every exercise and just bench pressed and, done, all the old school Arnold exercises. You would have the same results as whatever program you made up. So there's that, right? From my own side of things, I found the largest people in the world that I'd ever heard of, which was Ronnie and Jay, and decided that if I wanted to be as big as them, I'm going to do everything they did, workout-wise. And that's like, it's a real reductionist type of logic. And a lot of people will say, oh, you should start with a push, with like a upper or lower split, and then transition to a push-pull legs. And then you should do the thing that you will adhere to the best and that you enjoy the most when it comes to weight training, right? Like, there's a million ways to skin a cat. You could, again, like, you look at the top of bodybuilding. These are the people, and I don't say it because most people want to be a bodybuilder, but if you're interested in hypertrophy, look at the people who have accomplished the most hypertrophy, which would be the bodybuilders. They have almost, without exception, gotten there all different ways. They all do some things that are the same, which is they all go to failure. They all push themselves very hard. They all split up the days that they train certain body parts on, and they all eat in a caloric surplus, put muscle on. Beyond those things, you can do almost anything you want, and as long as you can still train, you're having fun, and you can recover, it's not wrong. And from there, it's finding out what works for you, what approach is rewarding to you, which one can you sustain day in, day out. And those are the things that are more important, because it's a really a marathon and not a sprint, right? You're not going to become Mr. Olympia. You're not going to become, king shit at your wedding, looking all good with shirt, with a tight shirt on. That's not going to happen in 6 weeks, right? It's going to happen in 6 months or longer, right? It's a much longer process. So, so I just started with like Ronnie's, classic pyramiding up, down in reps, up in weight to hit it like a top set of a couple. That's a lot of volume. It's not a very intelligent or geared approach. It's just lift heavy weights, have fun, and enjoy it. And then over time, I've moved more to an approach where I'm hitting. I'm doing like a roughly push-pull leg split where I have an accessory arm day, and I'm splitting up my leg into a quad dominant and a hamstring dominant. But it's very simple. It's that I have 2 top sets in every exercise that I take to failure with an intensifying technique, like a drop set or a rest pause. And then I change my exercises when I get bored with them every 6 to 8 weeks. And a lot of it's very intuitive, right? If you want to be that guy who tracks and tries to beat himself every workout because that's fun for you, I recommend it. That's fun for me sometimes. I like that too. But there are also days where you feel like crap or like things are wrong in your life and you can't go to the gym and get a killer workout. And maybe for an IFBB pro, that's an unacceptable answer because it's literally your job. But for an ordinary person, you have to know that. You have to not put so much pressure on yourself where you can go to the gym, move away, try and get a pump, and just enjoy being active. Because that's something that is lost in a lot of people get so obsessed about if they're making progress, how they look, are they calculating their reps in reserve properly, what's the RP in this set. And it's like, just go to the gym, train hard, and have fun, and a lot of the other shit will take care of itself.
Yeah, 100%. Again, I think I've said that about 5 times already, but I agree. I think that those 4 bullets you laid out are like, people should print that out. And then you can reduce it to something that simple. And then, as you said, when you start to overcomplicate it or whatever, you're creating your own barrier, like your own barrier to entry, right? Like by complicating it, you're now introducing things that you don't know, that you can't repeat, that you can't like do on your own, yada, yada, yada. So if you're able to keep it simple and then just make sure that it's fun and repeatable, you can get yourself on the right kind of routine and then slowly add 1 or 2 things, and understanding that it will take time to slowly add those things from 6 weeks to 6 months before you're really going to see a large change in your lifestyle and your mentality and your health and your like vitality and whatnot, energy you have for life.
That's the problem with listening to fitness professionals, because they're literally by definition professionals. Their entire professional life can be about doing things like that. So where, maybe you have a bodybuilder who's taking his blood glucose and figuring out when he should eat and doing timing his insulin, right? That doesn't mean that you should have, Joe fucking Schmo pissing on an insulin stick before he has his donut every morning because he wants to determine the right time to eat, right? But you get there with these people. You end up in these places where people are convinced that you should, I don't know, fasted cardio is a great example of this thing. Like there were debates for years about if it burns more fat, if it doesn't burn more fat, what the difference would be, all this crap. And it's like, turns out most people do fasted cardio just because it's easiest to do it first thing in the morning when they don't have anything else to do with their telling their stomach. That is the end of the answer to that question. And anything else on that is sort of stupid and irrelevant. And that's the case for so many things. Like, will it matter for your life, right? Do you need to be 1% leaner when you get on stage for the Olympia, or do you just want to look kind of good this weekend and you're wondering how you can fit the cardio into your schedule the best? Like, people need to really ask themselves their purpose in doing a lot of things before they can start breaking out method.
Yeah, I think that is, in I guess, Fin Twitter, business Twitter, and whatnot. There's this. Not that I'm like, I don't really belong in that space, but I follow people in that space. And there is this like hyper focus on regiments and planning and having things in like a system. And exactly to that point of like, at the end of the day, for the average individual, they don't need to be that regimented. And if they are, it's going to make it less fun. And then the end goal gets muddied, whatever, it becomes less clear because you're now focused so much on steps 1 through 15 instead of just like being a little bit healthier.
Yeah. And it creates this sort of like, and this is funny to me that we're exploring this because I do this with almost everything in my life and it becomes a real issue. I
do too. Yeah.
I set up, just like this impossible standard or this, and maybe not impossible, but like a very high standard expectation. And then when you know you're not hitting it, where you feel like you're not going to meet it, you become avoidant about the thing, which just compounds the problem. Whereas in the first place, if you had said, fuck it, I'm going to do the best job I absolutely can and continue to push through and sort of admitted your mistakes and just resolved to do better on them, you'd be in a way better position than if you sat there and just fucking beat yourself up for shit that didn't even matter in the first place, but that doesn't affect your life moving forward. Yeah. You're smiling, so you're exactly what I'm talking about. It's horrible. Yeah.
Well, literally the act that we're doing right now with recording this episode, this is something that I've wanted to do for 4 years, but there's been mentally, I would just add to the plan of what the end goal is. Oh, I should have the perfectly fleshed out social strategy. There should be a merchandise component. Oh, how am I recording? There should be a visual as well. Like, I'm looking at other bigger podcasts and I'm like, okay, maybe I should start renting out studio time. And it gets so complicated, and it's like, really, I don't even need this mic, but I like postponed recording because I wanted to get the mic. At the end of the day, I could just hop on Skype or Zoom, record, do the act, get a little bit better, and then go from there.
And we often look at people who are successful in these fields and think that they had these things, like say, oh, this podcast has this and this, so I need to have that now. It's like, no, that podcast threw shit at the wall for fucking several months or episodes or even years before they develop the strategy they have now. That's effective for them. And so taking their principles won't be effective for you because you're throwing your shit at the wall yourself, right? Like, people, like, I don't know, no one likes to think that their own shit is going to be bad for a minute, but like, you have to be okay with making something that just is kind of crap and going, fuck it. Let's see how we can make it better. And a lot of people don't want to do the thing that sucks first to get to the thing that's good because they don't want to have produce something that sucks.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me, but yeah.
This is a beautiful tangent. And I agree wholeheartedly. I do want to get back a little bit on the bodybuilding space just so that we kind of follow along and end this on a good note. With I want to make sure that we deliver a little bit of value and education as well as like inspiration and whatnot to people who are trying to explore their own side hobbies and stuff. So in the bodybuilding space, you actually mentioned this, the IFBB pros. To me, that seems like the easiest, like, quantifiable end goal in bodybuilding is to reach that pro level, and then it leads to sponsorships, and then you go to competitions and events, and then you kind of have this like career in the space. Can you talk about what like the IFBB pro card is?
The way bodybuilding works is there's the NPC, which is the National Physique Council, and they do all the amateur shows, right? And so they have designated certain shows like the North Americans, like shows that are significant enough to attract a lot of people. And if you win them or if you win your class, you're awarded a pro card, right? Essentially what that means is you can compete as a professional in the International Federation of Bodybuilding League, right? They run, 15, 20, 25 competitions. No, 20 competitions a year. Roughly, and there's prize money for participating in them, which is not from the amateurs, and exposure and so forth, right? All this is sort of irrelevant because the contests really are only a vehicle to qualify for the Mr. Olympia. You have to place there and do well. Because it's the Mr. Olympia, and because that's the most important thing in bodybuilding, because that was why, anyone gives a fuck about it, because of Arnold and because of, Frank Zane and all these other sort of classic, like, Lou Ferrigno, right? Like all the names, when most, especially our parents' generation, when they think of bodybuilders, they think of Mr. Olympia, and that's about it. And so as a result, a lot of the rewards in terms of exposure, sponsorships, everything, I mean, the actual cash prizes themselves, even though most bodybuilders don't make their living from winning cash prizes, they make their living from sponsorships, all that goes up as you reach the Olympia. And so really, like, becoming a pro does something for you. Having a big social media presence will do far more for you in terms of money than being a pro will. But having the social media presence, even if it's like kind of a crappy level, and being successful enough to generate exposure through placing shows, through making the Olympia, through doing these other things, that's the really your driver of money. And so there's a big syndrome where a lot of people, especially as you get older, like, I mean, I say older, I mean like into your late 20s and early 30s, turning pro for these people is the end goal, right? That's their lifelong accomplishment. They become a pro bodybuilder. They have a physique that backs it up, and they have, enough personal training clients or enough social media clout where they can make some money. Maybe they have to open their own gym, or they have a job that also, like there are two incomes coming in. But for a special few, and this is really picking your parents, to be honest, you will join the pro leagues at a young enough age, say 27, 26, younger in some cases, to where you then can have a full 10 to 15 year competitive career as a professional, right? And that's really only going to support you if you're one of the genetically elite who could be consistently placing top 5 in regional level shows and maybe qualifying for Olympias here and there on points, or winning a show every now and then, right? Like, that's where your money is. And again, that still, though, is just exposure, right? Like, the actual competition is, and prize money is great, but it only really exists in the top 3, and it's not that much. So the way you make money for a competition is in people wanting to watch you get in shape over time, saying, I got peeled and I use these products to do so, people wanting to watch you train. And the crazier thing to me, and maybe this is why I'm a fan of powerlifting too, but all the big, like everyone who's in the off season who's actually doing the impressive like lifting of weights, right? Like the most weight you'll lift is when you're at your biggest, your heaviest, your fullest, right? You're trying to put on more muscle for the next season, so you're really working hard to push yourself. But no one wants to see these guys training because, or a lot of people don't. I kind of like it, but because they're not in shape, right? I mean, a lot of them still have like abs and so forth, but they're not like jacked out of their minds. A lot of them are covered up because they have body image issues and don't want to have the whole world to watch them be fat as shit. And a lot of them will just push out previously recorded content from when they were in shape to show the off seasons that they have that gap to fill. It's hilarious, but the things we're watching them do aren't the things that have created all of this muscle. They aren't the things that make them so big and strong. All we're doing is watching them lose fat and maintain muscle they have. So it's a bizarre, strange realm of where all this happens. But the answer is social media is how you make your money as a bodybuilder. People watching, people understanding what you do, and you don't have to be a pro to do that. And being a pro will not guarantee you any more money or guarantee you any more sponsorships. It's almost all driven by your engagement and your fan base.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but that's the people can't see me, but I was cracking up when you were talking about pushing out content like in place of what they're actually doing to kind of fill that void. I do look at it, and I do look at it very similarly to this kind of like news. Well, I'll back up a little bit. The bodybuilding as a pursuit is very entrepreneurial in my mind. Like there aren't guidelines and guardrails for how it works, right? Like you're kind of saying, there's 50 different ways that the most elite guys got jacked. There's 50 different ways that the most elite guys or that the IFBB pros build out their businesses. It can be social focused where they're peddling product. It can be personal training and client focused, opening up their own gym. Some will have a variety of all of those. Some will have one exclusively, whatever. And then it seems kind of like getting that card is just a validator, like a ticket to then really allow you to use it on your marketing collateral for when you open up your gym. Saying, I'm an IFBB pro, come work out here.
It's that, and the distinction, like, just, I don't know how to phrase this. It's the cachet that pro card brings for sure, but just the fact of having a pro level physique is a huge draw for people to click in your social media, period, right? It's because you're not missing any major muscle groups. You generally look decent enough to like have a nice flow so people would like, you're aesthetically pleasing to look at. Or if you're a pro and you're not aesthetically pleasing to look at, you have to be giant and freaky. And people want to look at giant freaks all day as well. That's half what the Olympia is. It's who's the biggest and freakiest looking human being you can possibly find. And so the pro card in that sense, like, it's not the card itself, but it's the work that went into getting the card that'll enable you to build it out further as well. And so it's that nice dynamic there.
Okay. Can you name a few? I would love to I want to go research this after the call. Like some of the names, some of the people maybe who do it well, either like on social or maybe just some examples of guys who have a really good gym business. They have a really good client business. They have a really good social and sponsorship cachet or whatever. Like, who are kind of the movers and shakers in the space?
So Nick Walker doesn't say a ton in the social media caption, but he's got a ton of engagement and he posts timely things and he's sort of up on that a lot. And he's the best example I can think of just like a big freaky human who just wanted to be enormous. And that's like, and so he's like a young guy coming up and he's had a little experience in the last year and he's doing everything right in terms of growing that following. So he's really had this explosive success and growth. So that's interesting. Fuad Abiad is retired now, but in terms of branching out, he's the most successful. Right? He actually ended up launching the #1 bodybuilding podcast in the world. He has a lot of pros on that he's friends with. He helps cover it. He helps cover events. He has his own supplement company. So, guys like that are very successful. This guy, Jordan Peters, is great. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was going to ask you about Fuad. I've seen, we watched some of the episodes when I was with you. Is he the one who did the cookie company?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Or no. Sorry. He's his buddy at the cookie company. This guy, Juan Morel, who's from New York, does My Cookie Dealer is what it's called.
Okay.
They're delicious.
Yeah. Just looking at that, right? Like, bodybuilding, inherently eating a lot of food and pounding calories out is like a must in the space. And then this guy taking that and saying like, all right, here are cookies that I'm gonna push. Like, that's like a beautiful kind of brand extension.
I'll tell you what's even smarter. It's not just that like those two things pair nicely. It's that number one, you have bodybuilders who are conditioned and who make all their money off of showing off logos and things that are given them for free, whether it's merch, whether it's whatever it is, on their social medias. Number two, their social medias attract the most attention when they're in their most conditioned state, when they're most ready to be on stage, right? When immediately before, after competition, that's when they're getting the most clicks and engagement. Number three, when do bodybuilders want to eat food, and especially shitty, cheap food the most? Immediately after getting off stage, and they don't have to compete for another 6 weeks. And so he sends out free cookies to all these motherfuckers, and all they do is, as soon as they're done competing, go, oh my God, this delicious cookies are for me for free. How cool is everybody? Look how cool. I had some people send me some free delicious cookies. And within a year, he had blown up, exploded. And all it took was just sending, and other coding companies are actually breaking into the space and copying. And there's Fat Guy Paulie's, a couple other new brands, also for bodybuilders, doing a very similar type thing because it's such a lucrative, right? Like it sits at the crux of when people care. And that's where the money is in bodybuilding.
I love that.
It's so smart. And meal prep companies are trying to do the same thing, but they're not as like sexy as a cookie, right? No one gets all fired up to eat their bison and rice, So, but the cookies really grab people.
Yeah, I think the cookies really hit on like the community, or like the the community, right? I mean, it's natural and endemic enough to where the people understand it, and it's not obviously like a third party entrant. I mean, it's coming from someone within the community peddling, saying like, hey, look, I'm in here. I know that we all want cookies, right? And like, I know that this, so let me push it. And then there's that supporting from within aspect as well, as instead of just kind of buying from a larger, XYZ company who comes in because they're trying to profit off the space.
And then there's the exclusivity component too, which is that they did two things. One, they'll often send out flavors that weren't available yet, which is like whatever, get everyone to want to click on what the bodybuilders are doing and generate all the hype. And the other thing is their website's only live for like 8 hours when they drop. And they only drop every week or two. And so it gets people to get all fired up over this or that flavor. They have their staple flavors they like. They roll out seasonal ones. And so, but it builds this like, and even if you're not, I don't know, like I've built it from them a couple of times, but like when they're dropping on, so when they have new products come out, I know because their socials and other bodybuilder socials will be saying, oh, just comment order X cookies. And it's all organically sort of driven, which is why it's nice and why you don't believe it. Because if you think that, I don't know, GAT Supplements isn't telling all their guys to say, oh, hype everyone up for the new GAT Supplement drop. It's like, yeah, they're doing that, but everyone's heard the same, spiel about supplements. Yeah. No one thinks that cookies are going to make them a better bodybuilder, but they all want to be part of what it is to see someone who owns those cookies.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, I'm not super deep in the streetwear space, but it seems very similar, right? Like they're taking a page out of almost a Supreme book with seasonal drops and scarcity and, select people who kind of push the culture forward are the ones who get the initial insight and information. So
it does two things, right? It drives hype for your product, and another thing is also makes the old version of your product obsolete, which is genius, right? Because if you have, I've had My Cookie Dealer, but I haven't had the My Cookie Dealer Extreme Deluxe with 6 different flavors in it and 2 fucking, giant candy M&M stuffed in, right? I want to try that. I've had the old shit. I don't care about the old shit. I want the newest, coolest thing. And like, that's like, I don't know, the ability to create that kind of innovation I mean, that's everywhere though, right? Like every single bodybuilder, the reason why they do these shows and they do these preps is because they can sell 5 new shirts for the 2021 Olympia prep that they couldn't sell for the 2020. You just change one of the numbers out and fix a couple design numbers and you have a brand new product that all your fans who want to see you succeed and give a shit about you are like, fuck it, I want that one. Okay. Like, I don't know. I try to limit myself, but I have so many items of clothing. I'm just like, I bought that because I watched someone in a workout video work out with it and I wanted to look like him. Right? Like, it's insane. I don't look nothing like that person, but I'm like, fuck it, they look cool, man. I gotta have that.
But yeah, I mean, look, a lot of our activities are. Naval is one of my favorite people. He talks about like mimetic nature of humans, or something like that. I might be butchering it, but we do like we don't really know what we want. We don't know what's cool. We have to. Some people are pursuing it on their own and creating it on their own, but a lot of times we're just kind of being mimetic. Like we're looking at other people that we look up to and then choosing to do their actions as well in hopes of bettering ourselves and whatnot. It's usually people we look up to and have done things that we aspire to do or be. We go from there.
People are so frugal driven that they don't really consider how much of a social animal we are just as one giant people, right? Like that's not really well explored, but we like, I don't know. I often wonder like if a different kind of life form came and saw us, would they perceive us as one giant organism, right? Like how, I don't know, like how many of your ideas really are your own and how different are you? And how much of like what you think and believe is completely dependent on the feedback that you're constantly being given for existing in the way you are, right? Like it's impossible to say, and we all believe that we just think our own things, but who fucking knows, right? Like, every thought in your head might just exist because every single other thing is happening.
So I want to go down this rabbit hole so bad, but I'm going to try to control myself and not do it. I do just want to, there's one point I heard, I listened to the NIA well, I'll plug whatever, free media, it doesn't really matter. It's called the NIA podcast. It's with these like great, like internet memers basically. And, one of them is this guy named Trunk Fan. If you're on Twitter, follow him. He's hilarious, but he was dropping a quote from somebody else who I forgot, but he was like, humans don't have ideas have humans. So it's just kind of like, there's like, whatever, we become the vessel to enact like this larger thing. And we're not the ones who originated it. It's a real interesting thing, but yeah, let's save that for like a late night conversation at another time. So we talked about it briefly with the cookies, and you mentioned Paulie's and whatnot. We're nearing the end here, but I want to get into like a little bit of some of the players in the space, brands, products, companies. Can you maybe just like dive into some of your favorites that you interact with and maybe what they do? So it can be different things like training equipment, supplements, just apparel, even media companies, whatever.
So this is a really interesting space because there's been an explosion of athlete-led and driven products over the past 5 to 10 years, right? Traditionally, it was the Muscle Tex, the Redcons, the GAT Sport, right? All these sort of big box companies. And Redcons, that's a little unfair because they are a newer company. They have a little different thing going on, but it's not athlete run. It is bankrolled by someone who's been in the industry for a minute. All that to say, right, there are these, and I like Redcon, and I like Gymshark, for example, right? They're a sort of newer up-and-coming brand. They're sort of fitness light. Like there's some bodybuilders who wear them, but I wouldn't really put them in the category. They don't really get into the space because they have signed Chris Bumstead, who's probably the most popular person who's in fitness in the world, which was a genius move. But in terms of the companies I like, a lot of them there's Gasp Sport, which is they have their headquarters gym in Dallas, and they sponsor a ton of bodybuilders. The owner of the company is like very good personal friends with a lot of the up-and-coming pros, and I believe he got into sport because he was such a big fan and wanted to sort of like make his passion come to life. So Gasp is really good. They do apparel primarily. They do some equipment. They have some chalks. They have some, ammonia. They have some belts. They sponsor a lot of powerlifting and bodybuilding shows, local to Texas. So they're great. Nice. They're an interesting case because they started off as like a Finnish or like a Scandinavian type brand before branching out into the US in like the 90s. But Gasp is really good. Hostile, that's Fuad's company. They do some apparel, but they do some good supplements as well. They're great. Axe and Sledge, which is Seth Rossi's company, which if you're any kind of like outdoorsman, red-blooded American type, he is completely up your alley. He's all, hard work, take no prisoners style. Like imagine a little nicer and kinder David Goggins for bodybuilding.
I send his quotes to my friends pretty often. Ferocity is a funny guy.
He's a maniac. He's an awesome dude. So his products are great. In terms of clothing, you have Trained by JP, which does clothing and supplements. He's from the UK, but he's known as like Jordan Peters is JP. He's a coach, competitor who never turned pro because he couldn't get his gut under control because of how big he wanted to get. He basically ate so much food, his stomach grew to be too big for him to really be that competitive on stage. But he's in terms of height to muscle, he's probably like the largest human in the world who's ever existed. He trains like a freak. Like he's just maybe one of the strongest, most jacked people who's ever lived. And I mean, that's just an interesting side of that. He could never turn pro because of his genetics and the insertions of his stomach, which is fucking crazy. But his products are really good. And yeah, I think like the story of the 2010s in fitness is the mom and pop shop takeover, right? Like before then, it was you had to get signed to a magazine contract. You had to get signed to one of these big companies. They would sponsor you, put you out. If you're lucky, you get your own signature line, right? That's what a lot of these guys would get. Nowadays, people are from the ground up are saying, I know how to make supplements. I know what I want in my products. And Hostile is a great example of that. Access Ledger is a great example of that. And these are the people who are starting to take over more and more of the market, right? They're getting deals to be on GNC's #1 shelf. They're getting deals to, sponsor different shows, right? These are the things that are starting to that drive them, and Redcon, I would say, are the main players in the area right now forward.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a good kind of sweep of brands as well for people to kind of look out for. It is interesting, right, that a lot of it is not influencer led, because that might not be the right term, but it is professional led, it is individual led. Which I think is kind of a sign of the times, and we've had conversations about how in the future, or our opinion in the future is of people are going to kind of be very community focused, and purchasing cycles and whatnot are going to be kind of carved up into different niches. So the individuals who now control their own distribution channels with YouTube and well, yeah, the third party distribution channels that they can reach consumers on, gives them a leg up over the brands that have to be kind of a little more buttoned up or whatever.
The problem with all that, though, that I see is that it encourages people to think only in the context that they're already situated in, right? Like if you're a bodybuilder, like you will say, oh, I can do this or that, other ideas. That's true, but they're all trying to find ways to make money off of the one thing that you do, right? And so it's hard to be a real invested consumer and a real invested bodybuilder and someone who's really in that space and really is pushing, driving, like has goals, and they're independent of what their own personal goals are, and to have something else going on in their life, right? Like it's going to be very hard for me to sit here and say that I want to be an IFBB pro in the next 5 years and I want to be able to make my living off of being a bodybuilder, and also that I'm in a master's program and want to be able to successful in professional life. Like those things fundamentally aren't compatible, and like the downside to creating that specialization or to getting people really invested in a certain thing is that you start having people turn off other parts of their life, in an effort to fit their whole life into the box that is what they want to do. And for some people that works, but it's not a scalable type thing, right? It's hard to branch out to the consumer like that, which, I mean, it's probably why Chris Bumstead's so popular, because his whole thing is like, I'm a regular guy. And that's why Classic is so popular, because it's like, I don't have to, murder myself, force feeding and being uncomfortable, right? Like, because if you really are a pro bodybuilder, you don't have a normal life. You can't. You have made yourself so large that doing human things is like off the table.
Yeah, unless you're Mr. Incredible, right? Like you're not a super jacked bodybuilder that's also an accountant.
No, it's insane. Yeah, like that it can't happen, right? No one. Yeah. It's a weird. It's how do you sell the people on the dream of being a pro bodybuilder while also not telling them that they're gonna have normal lives if they get there, right? Like it's yeah. You want to be the Ronnie Coleman. You want to have all the gas shit. You want to lift those heavy weights until you don't.
That's actually a great point. You're like, oh man, that's actually really interesting. So the people who are kind of pushing the industry forward for, you could call them maybe like the casual consumers, like people who are interested in the space, but like I like football, but I'm not training to be fucking Christian McCaffrey. Like I would love to, but it's just not happening. So in this, we're like, if I'm looking at his social and he's only peddling the highest end training circuit or merchandise and whatnot, I'm not really, I can't do it, because I would only do that if I was pursuing a professional career. So in the same sense, right? Like they're pushing all of these supplements and all of these workout routines, and if you want to get big, you do this. And the people are like, I do to an extent. So like, who is pushing out the happy medium of I do this, and on a pared down approach, it would look like this for people who do have a 9-to-5 still,
Yeah, I think like to a large extent, right? Like there's two different kinds of people engaged in that, right? There's the people who are willing to say, this is what I do because I'm a pro bodybuilder. You can do different things, and then there's people like I've sent you some of Joe Bennett's stuff or some of JP stuff where it's like, this is how you meet in the middle as a normal person, right? This is like these are the concepts we developed from training the best bodybuilders in the world, and these are the things that you need to take to put in your workouts that will make a concrete difference for you, right? the problem is that's probably, I don't know, 30% of the people in the space. The other 70% are fully banking on delusion, right? Like their entire business strategy is, I'm an online coach. If you do these things, you'll get like me. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people don't really claim natural anymore, but when social media was a thing initially, that was a huge problem where you had tons of people. I mean, it's a huge problem, right? You're an idiot if you can't tell who's used juice out of minds and lying about it, right? It's really not that hard to figure out, but there's a ton of people who do that, right? Like,
sure. So like false marketing and
What's up?
You said snake oil, and I was just saying some false marketing and some incorrect claims being made to mislead the public and whatnot.
But if you look at all the companies I just talked about, right, like the JPs, the Hostiles, the Action Sledge, those are founded by people who explicitly set out to do the opposite of that and to sort of bring the real life element to what high level bodybuilding is, and then tell people how they can take that and put in their lives. And the fact that that's been super successful is a great sign for the health of the industry in general. But it definitely is a weird dynamic between, like, Hostile, for example. I want a performance pre-workout. I'll pay an extra $10 for this great pre-workout that I really enjoy and love. And for a while, I'll talk about how good it is for him. And like, at the end of the day, I want to support his product. Like, I understand why I make the purchase. It's a good, intelligent thing for him to do as a marketing perspective. But like, I don't fucking need a high performance pre-workout with clinically dosed environments, all that stuff. I just need to show up and lift weights, right? Like, the whole idea that a pre-workout's part of what made Fuwada Pro or part of what would make me better is complete nonsense. It's the experience I'm being sold on. I want the experience of drinking them out of my shaker bottle, just like I saw him do before he went to go train, having the same flavor, going thinking, yeah, like I'm that guy. It's playing. It's like make believe. It's amazing.
Yeah, a lot of times, man, I find myself kind of referring back to this book, Atomic Habits, but it kind of like, he has a term in there where he's like, it's casting votes towards the identity that you want to have or represent. So it's exactly that. Like, I want to be the type of person who drinks his pre-workout, right here. I want to be I want to be the person who uses Hostile. I want to signal to everyone else in this gym that I like to consume this guy's content. That's really interesting. All right, look, I don't have any more questions. We're coming up on an hour here, so I think it's a good point to wrap it up. Thank you a bunch, man. This was awesome. I think a lot of people are gonna find this entertaining and find a lot of like interesting information as well in the space. I'll leave the ball in your court. If you want to plug any socials or shout out mom, whatever you want to do, go ahead and take the floor, my man.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This has been super, super, super cool and enjoyable. In terms of things to shout out or follow, me, Castle_Graceful on Instagram. That's about the only social media I have. If you want to see me pick things up and put them down, that'll be the place to do it. Give Big Tex Gym a follow. Honestly, we talk to them up plenty. And if you're in the Austin area, definitely either hit me up or come out and get a workout there with them. I don't know. Other than that, I would just say Cannoli Boys Worldwide.
Cannoli Boys, let's go.
That's right. Gone from NYU, but never forgotten.
Gone, but not. Yeah. Well, it was a good run. It
was.
All right, dude.
Some people are cleaning up the aftermath.
Yeah, we'll leave that for others. All right, hold up.